The old man entered the courtroom, his wrists shackled and his face marked by time, looking down. "State your name," the clerk requested. He answered quietly with a trembling voice, "Elias Carter, Sergeant of the United States Marine Corps." No one in the room could imagine what was about to happen. Minutes later, as the judge reviewed the case, her hand suddenly stopped. Her face went pale. That name, Elias Carter, was the man who had carried her brother to safety on the battlefield in Fallujah, before disappearing into silence. Elias Carter, 69 years old, sat hunched on the courtroom bench. His body seemed swallowed by an old military overcoat, a size too big for him. Under the cold lights of the room, the wrinkles on his face deepened, marks of decades of loss and suffering. Before, he wore his dress uniform, with medals on his chest. Now, he awaited trial wearing second-hand clothes, from a shelter. Case 47B caught the attention of the court officer, City of Newbridge vs. Elias Carter. The charges were for disturbing the peace, trespassing, and resisting arrest. He rose slowly, his joints aching from time's wear and untreated wounds. First Vietnam, then Iraq, visible and hidden scars he carried without complaint. The prosecutor, young and well-dressed, spoke with a rehearsed voice. Elias had been warned several times for lingering near the Jefferson Street Cafe. The owner had filed 3 complaints that month. But the prosecutor omitted one detail. Elias never begged or asked for favors. He only sat near the cafe's air vent to try to warm himself when winter tightened its grip. Next, the police officer testified he found Elias there at 11:45 p.m., refusing to leave when ordered. Elias, in fact, had not refused. He had only asked for 5 more minutes to finish half a sandwich a kind cook had given him. But on that occasion, his words were ignored and still are now. The prosecutor recommended 30 days of community service and a restraining order for the downtown area. This order would prevent Elias from visiting the 4th Street shelter, his only refuge, and also the church lunches, leaving him helpless in the worst time of the year. Judge Olivia Parker then addressed Elias. "Do you have a lawyer today?" He shook his head. His public defender had been called away for another urgent case. "Would you like to defend yourself?" the judge asked, peering over her glasses. Elias swallowed hard and spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "No excuses, ma'am. I just needed to warm up." The judge asked why that particular place. He hesitated, then said the cook Jimmy gave him food sometimes, that he had known him since childhood and that his father had served with Jimmy in the Desert War. When the judge inquired about his military service, Elias straightened a little and replied firmly, U.S. Marines, from 1975 to 1995. Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, Iraq. The words carried the weight of pride buried for decades, now breathing again. The judge made a quick note on the case and continued reading, but something in Elias' military record made her pause for a moment before speaking. Then the courtroom doors opened and a well-dressed man, in a dark blue suit, entered with a firm step. He approached the defense table, placed his briefcase down, and faced the judge. "Your Honor, I am Alexander Ross. I have just been hired to defend Mr. Carter. I apologize for the surprise." Elias was confused. He hadn't called any lawyer, much less a man with cufflinks and leather shoes. The judge found the situation strange, as she had not been informed about the new representation. Ross requested a brief recess to speak with his client. The judge agreed, granting 15 minutes. In the hallway, Elias whispered to the stranger, "I don't have money for this." Ross replied quietly, "You won't need to. My firm Williams, Ross Parker, will take the case pro bono." Elias frowned upon hearing the name Parker. "Same as yours," confirmed Ross. Back in the judge's chambers, Olivia removed her glasses and her hands trembled. 20 years on the bench had taught her to maintain control, but nothing had prepared her for this. "It can't be the same man," she muttered, but the evidence was too precise. She opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph, a younger version of herself beside her brother, Lieutenant Jack Parker, dressed in Marine uniform. He smiled proudly, arm around her, full of hope on his graduation day. Next to it lay the last letter from her brother, written from Iraq, the edges worn by time and silent pain. In it, Jack recounted a firefight in Fallujah, where his platoon was trapped, but Sergeant Quinn had advanced under enemy fire, saving a wounded Marine and covering the others' retreat. 2 weeks after that letter, Jack was killed by an explosive device. Olivia recalled the funeral, the folded flag, the silence of their parents, and the Marine who approached saying, "Your son saved my life." He needed to say no more. She would never forget that name, Mason Quinn. Years before, she had tried to find him to learn more about her brother's last moments, but the Army said he had been immediately sent to another mission. Later, they said he was discharged with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. Now, 2 decades later, he was here in the courtroom, a stranger to all but her. A knock on the door broke the silence. Ross entered, worried. "Olivia, what's this?" He, a former colleague of her late husband and a longtime friend, was one of the few people who called her by her first name. She showed him the photo. "It's him, Alex. The Marine who saved Jack, who carried him in that ambush." Ross was stunned. "The homeless veteran in your courtroom?" "Yes," Olivia confirmed, verified by the military record. Fallujah, 2004, same unit as Jack, awarded the Silver Star for the same action described in the letters. Ross asked if Elias knew who she was. She doubted it, as after marriage she had taken another last name. It's been 20 years. She took a deep breath. How does a hero end up like this? Fighting to survive the cold. Ross said that in a short conversation, he realized Elias had suffered more than most. Severe PTSD after his last mission, a wife who left him, benefits trapped in bureaucracy, construction work until injuries prevented it, then firing, eviction, and the streets. Olivia closed her eyes, hearing her brother's voice echo. Carter was the best among them, the one who would risk everything for his brothers. "If I come close to being half the man he was, I'll consider myself lucky." Ross suggested the judge recuse herself to avoid ethical conflicts. "No," she replied, "I won't let this man disappear again. We have ethical duties, especially to those who gave everything for this country." Back in court, she kept a firm posture and steady voice, but those who knew her noticed the slight trembling of her hands as she organized her papers. "Mr. Ross, has your client made a decision?" Ross stood and asked for all charges to be dropped. Elias had not trespassed, he was only trying to survive the cold, and they could prove that restaurant staff tacitly permitted him to be there. The prosecutor tried to object, but the judge silenced him. "I have questions for the defendant." Turning to Elias, she asked if he had really been in Fallujah in 2004, which he confirmed. She questioned whether he had participated in an operation near the city on April 17th, when a convoy was ambushed, and if he had rescued Lieutenant Jack Parker under enemy fire. Elias' face lit up with painful memories. Yes, he was a brave young lieutenant, who took a bullet trying to save a wounded medic. "I pulled him behind cover, but he kept telling me to help the others." A gray-haired man in the gallery stood and confirmed, "I was there, Your Honor. Carter saved 6 of us that day." The judge called for order, but her voice lacked its usual weight. Elias lowered his gaze, uncomfortable. The judge announced she would consider the record and release Elias from the charges, also ordering referral for psychological treatment and inclusion in support programs for homeless veterans. When the hearing ended, the judge felt tears streaming down her face. "You saved my family, and now I try to save you." Elias, as he left, smiled with a shy glimmer, for the first time in years feeling seen, heard, and above all honored.